Are we good?
Almost.
Okay,
Just waiting on the verification from YouTube.
no worries.
Okay, we are good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will now call this special meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education to order pursuant to KRS Chapter 61. Notice is hereby given that on August 18th, 2021, the chair of the Fayette County Board of Education called a special meeting of the Board of Education for Thursday, August 19th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. This notice serves to advise the community and media that this meeting will be held via video teleconference. The meeting will be live streamed at fcps.net/virtual meeting for the public viewing. In the alternative, pursuant to KRS 61.826, Section 2, subsection B, the John D. Price Building, 450 Park Place, room 159, is hereby designated as the primary location of the meeting at which members of the public can also watch the live stream of the video teleconference meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to receive presentations from two law firms who have applied to represent the board and to discuss temporary COVID emergency leave for employees. Ms. Daly, would you please take roll?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Miss Amy Green.
Present.
Mr. Tom Jones.
Present.
Miss Christy Morris.
Present.
Mr. Tyler Murphy.
Present.
Miss Stephanie Spires.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. And at this time, the first item on our agenda will be the temporary COVID emergency leave. And I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Liggins to lead us and the staff in that discussion of the proposal.
Thank you, Chair Murphy. Before I begin, I would really like to just talk a little bit about the beginning of the school year. We've actually had quite an excellent start. As you know, our students and staff are happy to be back in person. We're experiencing quite a few joys in it, and the advantages of being together on campuses. Of course, the strict safety and health protocols that we've implemented is making this possible in the midst of a pandemic. But we feel that with these protocols, we'll be able to have somewhat of a normal year, including field trips, family events, extracurricular activities, etc. Of course, we are committed to having in-person learning, but we have received several questions due to the influx of the Delta variant about shifting to virtual learning. And should conditions in the virus change to warrant reconsideration of our current mode of instruction, there would have to be action from Frankfurt in order to make that possible, as it is currently not an option at the local level. We have, of course, had some concerns with in the area of transportation. And as we all know, this is a national challenge. Unfortunately, businesses across our nation are having difficulty hiring staff, and the bus driver shortages has been documented for years. And we've tried several things, and we'll continue to be innovative in order to make sure that we're doing what we can in order to provide the services we need to our students. But our staff is working very, very hard to make sure that we are providing as much services as we can, considering the situation, to our families. We're committed to being transparent about it and communicating with our families when there is a delay beginning on Monday. In addition to the robocalls that we send out when there's a canceled bus, we will also begin having pop-up messages on the district's website for families who need to know whether or not their buses have been delayed, or whether or not they're actually been canceled altogether. And also, I wanted to talk about, as we prepare for the presentation that Mr. Rodney Jackson will bring, is our data collection process and our data entry for the dashboard. It has been taken down temporarily. As you know, we had a data board that really, we were committed to be honest with our students and our staff and our families about where we were with COVID cases in our schools and quarantines. However, we did find that due to the exponentially increase in the numbers of cases in quarantine over the past week, that we just did not have the staff structure in place in order to keep that up to date. So we have taken that down, and we are working on changing our infrastructure and getting those numbers to return as late as Monday, August 23rd, so that they will be updated and we can make sure that we're providing accurate information to our families that they so desperately want and need. And speaking of COVID, we've also found ourselves in a situation to where we need to possibly consider taking care of our teachers, staff, and other employees. And so that is something we'd like to talk to the board about this evening. And for that I would like Rodney Jackson to come forth and speak to that further.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
We can hear Mr. Jackson. I don't know if you froze or what happened.
It appears he's frozen.
Could you take it on, Ms. Dyer, please?
Yes, sir, certainly. So before you tonight, we want to bring a discussion forward about proposing, as you remember last year, the board approved 10 COVID emergency days for employees. The proposal this year, due to the current regulation, there was a regulation passed by the Kentucky Board of Education that allows us we will be providing paid leave in that regulation for fully vaccinated employees who must quarantine. As you know, or are probably aware, that someone who is fully vaccinated does not need to quarantine unless they are showing symptoms. Once they have tested positive, if that occurs, then they would no longer be quarantined. They would be moved into the category called isolation. So the recommendation that we are bringing forward today is that the board would approve 10 COVID-related sick days for vaccinated employees to utilize if they or their children must quarantine or test positive for COVID-19. And this would be exclusive to the 2021-22 school year, and then they would expire on June 30th, 2022. So it mirrors somewhat what the board did last year, but it has to be a different category because of regulation. That's kind of the recommendation in a summary. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Dyer. I will open up now to questions from board members for staff.
I don't-
Well, you go ahead, Steph, Ms. Spire,
Oh.
sorry.
I was gonna say, I don't really have a question. I'm just really excited about this, especially the piece about children. As some of you all know, I have been very vocal for the past 4 or 5 weeks in the community and lobbying legislators and business leaders to really offer this to their employees so that we can make sure our children are staying quarantining and being safe for the good of kind of all of us. And so I think it really is important that we as a district are doing this as well and trying to take care of our employees and their families and allowing them this support. So I'm very pleased to see this being brought forth.
Thank you, Board Member Spires. Board Member Jones.
You mentioned that this was for vaccinated employees, Ms. Dyer. So
Yes, sir.
employees who are not vaccinated, does this policy affect them?
No, they would use their current accrued leave that they have.
And
This
do
is
you,
the emergency regulation that has been passed by the Kentucky Board of Education for the quarantine leave. So this policy or this process that we're bringing forward mirrors that same Kentucky Board of Education regulation.
and there's no way that we could estimate what the cost of this is. I think you have said 500,000, is that right?
Yes, sir. What we used was a board approved leave that you approved last year. That was January to June 30th. We used that cost and then elevated it for the full year. So that's how we backed into that particular cost. So we used the data from last year and then applied it to a full year.
So this would impact the general budget?
There would be a budgetary impact, my understanding, and Dr. Liggins, correct me if I'm wrong, or Ms. Coe, who is on here, it could be ESSER funds because it is COVID related, but I think that would be in their particular area to describe.
Yes, we could use extra funds for this should there be a need. However, when presenting the working budget, it will also be something that will be presented to the board as part of that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson's back on here. leave follows through the Employee Benefits Office, which is why Mr. Jackson is the one that was presenting that. So he is back on here as well.
Thanks, Jenny and Dr. Liggins, for picking that up for me. My computer completely died in the middle of that. I'm not sure where I left off as far as the talking points related to this, but if the employee tests positive and exposure occurred outside the workplace, the employee will use COVID leave until exhausted, and then any appropriate leave are used after that. The exemptions for this, of course, are medical and religious reasons. And we're going to piggyback off the same process that we use for students, which means medical, we have documentation from that from a physician. And if it's from religion, we have it from a clergy. If an employee is not fully vaccinated, the employee would have to use their own leave and time and would not be eligible for COVID leave. This would be retroactive back to July the 1st if the board approves it, and be applicable through June 30th, 2022. We work with any individuals and employees who have retroactive situation in our office to make sure everything's in order, if they have the proper documentation to do so. And again, I apologize, it couldn't help, my computer just died.
We understand. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And so my understanding is the current, what this is attempting to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, what this is attempting to do is to kind of bridge a gap that's created in the existing regulation, because the existing regulation covers quarantine for an employee, but it doesn't cover two other scenarios: A, testing positive and being isolated, or B, a child being placed under quarantine and you needing to provide child care. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Now, does when we say vaccinated, are we saying fully vaccinated? Or if we have a situation where someone is getting the Pfizer or Moderna, the 2-shot vaccine, and they're in the middle of their doses, they say they have shot 1, but they haven't gotten shot 2. How do we classify those individuals?
Well, we have recommended that we follow the CDC guidelines that states what fully vaccinated is. And again, for example, Pfizer requires 2 shots, where Johnson & Johnson requires 1, depending on which they have, they would go through that to determine their status. But of course, the board has the recommendation. They can adjust it accordingly as they do at their discretion.
And do you all know if the KBE regulation specifies fully vaccinated?
It
Yes.
does.
Thank you.
I have a question on that. With the booster coming online probably in the next few weeks, my fear is if we do this and say fully vaccinated, is the booster included in, you know what I'm saying? Like, are we going to be back here in 2 weeks having to change this? So I just want to throw that thought out to you all. Just throwing that out, speaking out loud.
Thank you, Ms. Spires.
Again, I think.
Just want to jump in here and, sorry,
No,
and commend
go
you
right ahead.
guys for recognizing this need. I had several employees reach out to me over the past week or so and bring this to my attention. So I do believe it's necessary in order for us to be able to mirror what's going on in the state and with the updated regulation. But also want to thank Jessica Heiler in particular, because I was not exactly sure. I thought that the new regulation extended into Fayette County. So I appreciate her reaching out to me to help me understand the issue here.
Any questions or other questions or comments, board members? Board Member Green.
I had a question about what vaccinated meant, so you covered that for me, but I also want to follow my other board members and say thank you all for thinking, being forward thinking and seeing the holes and filling those in, so that we are protecting our children by protecting our teachers and making sure that the children that need to be home are able to be home, and the teachers that need to be home are able to be home. So I hope that other community members see this, and like Board Member Spires had said, and follow suit. So thank you all very much for thinking about this.
And
So Chairman Murphy, are
go ahead.
you interested in there being a decision we make about this tonight?
This was put on the agenda mainly tonight for discussion, to hear board feedback and answer board questions. If the board is comfortable moving forward with the proposal we can put it on the agenda for action on Monday's regular meeting. If there are any adjustments or tweaks we would like to see, we can also request those here in this setting and then have something prepared for action on Monday.
I think the only issue is about the term vaccination, but other than that, I think I certainly would agree with moving ahead with it. So I think everybody else feels that way too.
And then I will say, you know, we have for a certified teacher, they have 10 days, they start the year with 10 days of sick leave, or if you're basically it's one day a month, right? So it's 12. Some of our year-round employees have 12. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Dyer. And if you think about a new teacher, if they're asked to isolate, you know, that's 10 days of isolation. If it's on a weekend, you take off a couple weekend days, it's 8 days. They've burned through 8 sick days, bam, in one fell swoop. And especially for many of our female educators, they often have to rely on banked sick time for maternity leave. And so when you think about this, because your sick time rolls over. Now these days aren't accrued, they don't roll over, they're there for this year to use. So I think it's important, given this environment that we're in, we're addressing some of these concerns, we're bridging some of these gaps. And so I echo what the other board members have said, that, you know, this is, we appreciate the work of staff in putting this proposal together. And I think we feel comfortable with the way it is. We may want to add some language in there, though, to Board Member Jones and Board Member Spire's point, clarifying the vaccination terms. And that's something that maybe we can look at whatever the CDC or Kentucky Department of Health guidance is, or even what, you know, KDE is doing at this point. But I think having that clarity will help, and then we should be ready to take action on Monday, is what I'm hearing.
Did we require employees to show proof of vaccination or ask them to?
Well, we have security officials within our department that are allowed to look at information, medical information, so they can voluntarily give it to their supervisor. But if they don't want to do that, then they will submit it to my office and we can verify the information for them.
Thank you. I just heard today that they might look at an 8-month window from the last shot for the booster once they start rolling those out. So in the general population, that probably won't be a big deal, but for us, it'll be a massive effort, just like it was the first time around.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments, board members?
I have a question, not about this, but about actual kind of the report Dr. Liggins did just a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can I throw it in here?
Yeah.
Would it be possible, Dr. Liggins, for the staff to send out push notifications about the buses in the morning? Because I'll just be honest, as a parent, his bus didn't show up. I'm not looking at my email. I'm not looking, but and the robocall didn't come forever, but if a text had come out, that would have been probably the fastest, easiest way to reach me. So I don't know if the tech team can do that, but I would recommend putting out.
We'll look at our, we actually have a team meeting tomorrow about transportation in general. So we'll look at the variety of options we do have available. And we really want to make sure that we reach our parents whichever way possible. Worst case scenario is we know we're going to put it on the website. So if someone missed it for whatever reason, they can always look on there and it'll be right when you log in.
Thank you very much, Dr. Liggins. And thank you for the update. I know that all of us as board members have gotten questions that, you know, there's a lot of adjustment in districts across the Commonwealth, across the country. And we really do appreciate our staff, our students, our families who have really stepped up and done the work that we've needed to do to start the school year. And then also, you know, what we see is that we're still dealing with this pandemic. And so it's the importance of getting vaccinated if we can, and wearing our mask, because it is making a difference, and it does make a difference, so that we can stay safely in person. So thank you for the update and for the information. Anything else, Dr. Liggins, from you or from staff?
No, that will be it. Thank you all so much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. And then at this time, we will hear presentations from two firms who submitted RFPs for the board attorney RFP that was issued by the board. And we'll start with Fowler Bell. And whoever wants to go first, you all can go first.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to unmute.
No, I understand. I understand. Thank you. And so we'll just have a presentation if you would like to share a presentation with us, and then we can open it up for some questions.
Okay. We'd first like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about representing the board. I'm going first because I have represented the Fayette County Public Schools in the past as in-house general counsel. It was many moons ago, and I had a young child and had a lot of nighttime board meetings because I tried to do a really good job and be responsive to all the schools. That's your front line, or your school people. So I tried to really be responsible to all of them and responsive to their needs. And so I was recruited actually to go to the Kentucky School Boards Association, where I worked for 20 years. And I'll tell you, my voice has been suffering a little bit because I do a lot of legal training for districts, and I've done a 6-hour session today, but I do have a special microphone here. I'm hoping will work for us. So Guy Colson, who is senior member of the firm here, one of the owners, will talk after me some more about the firm, and Chris Colson also will talk more about that. The three of us comprise our education law section here at the firm. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I have done, and they're each going to talk about some of the things they have done. We would like to know what you would want to hear from us about. We're not really sure exactly what you would want to hear about. So if you feel the need to break in and ask a question as we're talking, that's fine with us. We don't have any problem with that. And I certainly am used to that. So not a really big issue for me. I love working with educators, and all of my clients are education entities, either educational co-ops, school districts. This is what I've done for my entire career. I've represented some businesses also in my early career. And school district also is a business. You also have laws that you have to comply with, that all employers have to comply with, and all businesses have to comply with. So, and one of the things I do want to clear up is, I think because I have not moved around a lot in my career, my resume writing skills might be a little rusty. And so I have listed committee involvement on there, and I've listed a bunch of committees. I have served on those committees over a number of years. I do not currently serve on all those committees, because you would look at that and think, well, you know, what else is she going to have time to do? So just to clear that up. But I am gratified that all of those different agencies and groups wanted me to serve on their committees because of my background of working with education law. Why choose us? I mean, that's the thing, right? Why choose us? Well, public school law, as you know, if you've ever tried to look at a school law book, and I don't know if any of you have ever seen a hard copy, but it's pretty big. There's a lot of Kentucky school laws because our legislature loves to legislate about schools. And there's not a year that goes by that you don't get quite a bit of legislation about schools in Kentucky ever since our Education Reform Act back in 1990. On top of that, of course, you have all the federal laws that come into play. And the board attorney has to know how to sort and sift through the federal and the state laws to come to some good result in dealing with any kind of a situation. So you can't practice one little area of the law in a vacuum. You know, we have to understand how all this fits together. Guy Colson and I have represented school boards for, I think I've got close to 37 years, and he's got close to 26 years or something representing these school boards. We have seen a lot of laws and regulations come and go over the years. I personally have been involved in a lot of those regulations, as when I was with the Kentucky School Boards Association, I was an administrative lobbyist and for the School Board Association, and was always representing your point of view at those meetings, and thus got to help craft a lot of those regulations. So when you're dealing with the school board, you know as well as I do from just going to your board training, you understand that there's a lot of laws in Kentucky about who has the authority for what. You have the board members, you can do certain things. You have the superintendent, who has the authority under law to do certain things. You have your principals who have authority. You have your SPDM councils that have authority. Then you have your finance officer that has certain responsibilities. There are certain types of, even with the budget of allocations you have to make to SPDM councils. You have limits on how you can purchase things, conflicts of interest, staff discipline, student discipline. All that is specialized in Kentucky to Kentucky law. Now, we also know about the laws that affect you from the federal level, the Title IX, protecting students, of course, from discrimination, harassment, and sports equity. A lot of people think of that as sports equity, but it really has to do with harassment, discrimination also. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which I have spent a lot of my career working with. Consider myself to be as good at that as anybody in the state. Actually wrote the procedures manuals that most districts are using for special education and for Section 504 services to students. There's also general laws, general employment laws. We have people in our office, including Guy and Chris and I, that have worked a lot also with Title VII that has to do with employee rights, Fair Labor Standards Law that has to do more with your business decisions and your employment laws and your pay mostly. The Americans with Disabilities Act, I've had a lot of experience with that. And that applies, of course, across the board to your program access, to your staff members, to your students. Applies to everything you do. Then you get into your leave situations, Family Medical Leave Act. How does that interplay with workers' comp? How does that interplay with the Americans with Disabilities Act? So there are just numerous laws that we have to, at least has to hit us when a situation arises. Could this be an issue? Is this something we have to think about? Are we going to try to put together a plan that's going to violate this other law? We have to be sure we don't run afoul of all of that. We have attorneys also who understand and insurance coverage. That's one thing that our office has. Not a lot of offices I think. We've prepared and worked with a lot of contracts for school districts in particular. And I know when I was in Fayette County, there was a lot of contracts coming through. And now when we have our pathways, to education, to higher education and to the adulthood, a lot more contracts. I know Guy's been involved with that because we've had conversations about them. So we're very, very well experienced with all these laws involving state and federal laws that directly affect school districts and with how that fits together. And that's very important, I think, for you. Now, we do keep up with these laws because, the law changes all the time. And that's what makes it difficult. And that's why we have to have these expensive electronic legal research systems and all these kind of things. And we have general systems. We also have specialized education law systems where we get updates daily from the federal laws and federal government and what's going on with the Federal Department of Education. We keep up with what's going on over at the Kentucky Department of Education by looking at their website to find out what's going on there. I also still have a lot of contacts with the superintendents, local superintendents advisory council. And they do pull me in from time to time to still advise them on regulations, as I did a lot of that when I worked at the Kentucky School Boards Association. I have a lot of good contacts with all of the K groups, as we call them, the Administrators Association, the Superintendents Association, the School Boards Association. So just have had a lot of experience with that. And you can see the gray hair in my head that I have been doing this for a while. Of course, we keep up with the new laws and court opinions through our research systems. We also belong to the Kentucky Council of School Attorneys, the National Council of School Attorneys, and Guy and I both made presentations for those groups. And we understand things about student rights, search and seizures, just disciplinary, what can you and cannot do in student disciplinary situations. And those can be very tricky things, especially when they involve the First Amendment. Now, the best way to avoid litigation or to win litigation is to pay attention to what the board puts into policy, for one thing, for your staff members, because they're on the front lines. They're dealing with the students, they're dealing with the staff. Sometimes they're dealing with the money issues, and it's just very important for them to have attorneys in place that they can go to. Now, we might not be able to say immediately exactly what the law is on the thousands of laws that affect school districts, but we know where to look and we know what we're looking for, and that's very important. If you have attorneys with less experience, it's going to take them a lot longer to try to figure out where to even go look to figure out what this situation is really about than it's going to take for those of us who have a lot of experience. You know, and if you make it real plain that you're operating within the bounds of the law, I think that gives the public confidence. If you have attorneys that are well respected in the state and the community, I think that also helps with that. Now, we understand the daily needs. We understand that sometimes you need attorneys on short notice. We're always available. Our cell phone numbers are on our business cards. I would be your primary lead because Guy does a lot more of insurance type work for some businesses than I do. And I don't do as much of that. I like to focus more. I do some of it, but I like to focus more on working day to day with school boards and with the staff in school districts and planning how we can be in a legally defensible position should someone complain about something that we have done. That's very, very important. You know, anybody can sue you, but are you going to look good to the news media? Are you going to come out looking like you knew what you were doing and that you're trying to comply with the law? It's very, very important for anyone in a public office and for your personal peace of mind and for the peace of mind of your staff. You need attorneys that they have confidence in, that you have confidence in. You know, and you get into these situations sometimes like, you know, maybe somebody sends an internet threat through to the district, and there are a lot of complicated issues surrounding that. What can you tell the media? What can you tell the parents? If there was a student involved, that gets a lot more complicated. And just how are you going to do that? And who do you have to report all those things to? And we have dealt with those things and can pretty quickly devise you a good plan to get you through that. And that is going to be very important to you also. Even in the COVID situations, I've had a lot of questions from my other council districts this year, you know, about transferring people mid-year. There's all kinds of Kentucky laws about that, relating mostly to certified staff. If you have your contracts drawn up a certain way, you can move your classified staff mid-year. If you don't, you know, you can't do that because contracts have the force of federal law behind them. So there's just so many things that you do have to be able to think about when you're trying to address these situations. Because you can't step on the toes of some other person who has authority in the district, as in, let's say something happens, the superintendent wants to transfer a staff member into a school. Well, because of our SBDM laws, that's not as easily done as just making that move. The principal has input into that and might be even able to make that decision. So there's just things that you have to be aware of. There's pitfalls. And because we have been doing this a long time, we have seen it before CARA, we have seen it after CARA, and we have kept up with it. And once you learn basically how it all works, it's much easier for us to formulate plans to try to keep you out of trouble or to deal with these emergency situations for you. Our office, quite honestly, is a great choice for you. You know, you get into all these situations, even with nowadays with COVID, you know, not only the movement of staff members, are we going to need these staff members to do something else? Does the federal government even let us, you know, let somebody go while we're taking the federal money for the COVID? You know, you get into all of those issues. And it's just unique situations, you know, the mask issues. What about the kids that don't wear the mask issues? Just some of the things you've been talking about. We also keep up with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission laws, and I check those all the time because I work a lot with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I'm constantly looking at the EEOC websites to see what is new in the COVID situation. You know, what does the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission say about having people be vaccinated, about wearing the mask, about what questions you can ask these people within the bounds of the law? Because you can't, you know, there's certain questions you can and you can't ask. So we keep up with all of that. And like I say, when you call us for advice, we can give you good answers. We can, we know where to look to find answers going down the road in a situation and to help you put together a good plan. We do have a lot of experience with the day-to-day stuff. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the phone and on emails with people, have been doing that for, you know, 30 years, I guess, probably. We've done a lot with administrative complaints. We've also done a lot of litigation, Guy and Chris particular. I've done a lot of administrative work with the Office of Civil Rights, the U.S. Department of Education. I've had very good success with that. I have a lot of information and have worked a lot with the Office of Education Accountability, the Kentucky Department of Education, having been on a lot of their committees through the years. The Education Professional Standards Board, I actually chaired some of their committees. Was gratified to be called upon to help with those things. Have good relationship with Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Understand how to work with the Department of Juvenile Justice. I was KSBA's representative to the legislature when we were redoing Kentucky juvenile justice law in Kentucky. All of these agencies are people that your staff have to deal with at certain points, and just dealing with kids and dealing with their education. We believe that public schools are important. Guy's kids both went to the Fayette County Public Schools, and Chris is a product of the public schools. You're going to hear from him today. Very smart young man, very well respected in the community. Guy Colson's chair of our education law section here. He's represented Berea for, I don't know, almost 26 years. That's a pretty good record to keep the same clients. I've had a lot of the same clients for 20 years. Our office is also inside your district. We all three live here. We can get to any of the school sites quickly. That does save you money in the long run. Although we do understand we're doing a lot of things virtually now. We're doing a lot of things on the phone, but sometimes you do need to come on site and have conversations with people and look at records. And it's very handy for us to come and do that. And we know what we're looking at and what we're looking for when we come to the records. We don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what we need to look at. We know what we need to look at for any particular situation. We know also that many of the legal issues involve your constituents, and they involve students, teachers, other employees, and we treat all these people with respect. Even if we are in disagreement with their position, you're in disagreement with their position, we are respectful in the way that we treat people. We are nice people, and that is very important also, I think, for any professional person to be able to say. I am now going to turn the presentation over to Guy Colson, who I'm going to tell you is one of the most respected attorneys in Lexington. He won't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you that. And he's respected both for his legal abilities and for his integrity as a human being. And that's very important also. I appreciate your attention, and any questions you want to ask, I'll be glad to take them now at the end of our presentation, whatever you prefer.
I will just tell you all know exactly why she's with our firm. We love education, and this lady has written most of it, folks. I know nothing. I'm a practicing attorney for 47 years, and I tell everybody, I see things every day that I can't believe happen. And nobody ever calls us and says, I have a great day. I don't have anything to talk about. Just wanted to tell you I love you to death. We attorneys get the bad end of things. And I want to tell you this. I've been through a whole lot for over 30 some years with like one of our district, Berea Independent. And my intent and our intent would be, depending on how you all would, if you select us and how you set this up, is to be prevention minded. We don't want lawsuits from any resource or from any person. And so the quicker we get to know things that are going on, the quicker we can give hopefully good advice. There are times, ladies and gentlemen, when we don't know an answer, just like Teresa said, but we have the resources to find it quickly. And as she said, all my children have been through public school, except Chris went to Transylvania and then went back to public school at UK Law. But I went to public school. I grew up Campbellsville Independent. So I just enjoy education law. I enjoy helping kids. What you are doing as board members it's all about kids and helping kids. And so the least money we can spend on legal expenses, the more you can spend on kids. And I just want to say that to you. Teresa and I both have trained on supervision and negligence and everything else staff. And we hope that we teach them well, but as she said, you guys, all the teachers, as you know, are raising children. That's what the law has now said. When the child walks in your door, you got to be the best parent on the planet. Whether you are at home or not, you got to be when you come in the door. And our hope is to, and if we were selected, is to try to guide issues and problems and get rid of them so they can educate kids and not be taking depositions or be in hearings and all that type stuff. That's what we would like the opportunity to do. I've been practicing 47 years and all here in Fayette County, all with this firm. And my son, who will introduce himself, I'm a litigator. I'm an older attorney, so I've got corporate clients. I do litigation. I do plaintiff's work. I've got a whole, what you get with me is what Teresa was saying. I've seen things and try to work at them from every angle to get a solution as quickly as possible with as little damage to everybody as possible and get matters solved. And so we've got a real estate department that can help in certain situations. I know the school board I represent, they get things from bankruptcy. They don't know what it is. We've got bankruptcy experts here. We've got 11 attorneys, but we do a lot of things. We don't do any criminal stuff at all. But otherwise, we've got things that can be done. And I appreciate the opportunity to let you have us present this. And we would look forward to representing you. And we can, like she said, we can answer the phone and be there quickly because that's where we live, Fayette County. Thank you all.
I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Chris Colson. I've been practicing here and at Fowler Bell for 12 years or so. I've been doing education law for a fraction of the time that Teresa and Guy have been, but I have been involved in that for some time, and I really enjoy it. As I said, that I grew up in the Fayette County Public Schools. I went on to Transy in UK, and so I've been here in Lexington for a long time. I really enjoy the community. Really, I really believe in the public school mission. I think it's really important to grow young, smart and good young men and women, which really will ultimately improve the community. And I think that the public school system is what is a major part of that. So, I'm sure I'll be mostly just supporting these other two, who again are many more gray hairs than I have. I do have a few, but they have many more. And so anyway, just a pleasure to talk with you all. Happy to answer any questions that you have, but just so thankful to be here. So
Thank you all for your presentation. Board members, any questions?
I would have some questions, Mr. Murphy, but I would want anybody else to go first.
Board member Jones, you can go ahead. No one's chopping at the bit yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying about prevention, that you're prevention minded. With that in mind, how would you envision getting started were you to be selected to serve in this regard?
I think, Teresa, all of us have talked, and that it's the way whatever firm you hire, as you know, you've got Shelley already around, but the board kind of has to give direction because we represent the board, as you know. And normally what would happen is, and the superintendent would call us, but hopefully it would be opened up where your HR could call, transportation can call. There's contact people is what Teresa and I and Chris had discussed were we to be selected. That if there's a problem, if they think there's a problem, then they call. That's prevention. They don't wait. They don't let it happen. If they know about it or there's an issue that's presented to them, they call and we can immediately get on it. Sometimes there's bad stuff that happens that we may even need to go to a school along with some investigators just to see what's going on. But nip it in the bud is the contacts that would be set up. Sometimes in some districts, maybe just the superintendent has the only contact. But as we would get to know people, just, if there's a HR issue, then Jennifer or Rodney or somebody would call us immediately and say, we got a question on this. We don't know whether we're doing it right. instead of it happening and then it not be right. And I think employees enjoy that conversation because sometimes they teach us. I mean, as Teresa says, we can't keep up on everything, but that's what I'm talking about is just what's going to be the give and take and how deep in the system can we get a call from somebody that says, Mr. Colson, I've got this issue. Can you help? Because some districts they can block that kind of stuff and you have to go through one person for everything and that slows the process down. Hopefully I've answered you. Maybe Teresa or Chris has another idea, but.
Hello, Tom. I remember you, as you probably remember me from our days together, working in the Fayette County Public Schools. I'm not sure exactly. I think Guy's talking about our lines of communication. We take that direction from the board as a whole, as he says, because you are our first client in the district. As to personnel issues, of course, that's the superintendent under Kentucky law. But we would take direction from the board as to who you would want us to interact with in the school district, who was allowed to call us. And you do need to have a clear line of communication for us to understand who it is that we're supposed to talk to, because, you know, we don't want to get a call from some administrator who may think they did something wrong, you know, and talk with them about something, because sometimes I'll get calls from my clients and it's just somebody that happens to know me from the school district. And when they start talking, I kind of realize they're a little bit crosswise with somebody else in the district. And I have to say, look, you got to understand, I represent the welfare of the district as a whole. And my first obligation is to that and to the board as a whole. And so I can't help you with your personal problem if you're crosswise with the superintendent of the school board. So we do some of those things. Now, asking how we get started, I guess that could be another piece. If you have attorneys that already handle things. Now, I understood the RFP to be more of a day-to-day consult thing. And so picking up on those issues should be just what Guy said. We need to know, they need to know they have access to us, and then they contact us and we talk with them. If you are looking at involving us in any kind of your litigation or your administrative hearings, and you want us to retrieve files from other firms, ethically, those firms have to give us those files if in fact you determine that you want those cases to come to us. And so I don't know if that was part of your question or not. And if we didn't answer it, please ask us another question.
Well, yeah, I think all of these, and it's good to see you, Ms. Combs. Yes, I do remember you quite well, and I have a great respect for the work that you've done when you were in Fayette County, and then of course with KSBA. But yes, you are answering the question. I guess the only area that I was curious about was whether or not you would think it would be appropriate that the firm examine our policies and to determine whether or not there may be some issues within the board policies that might need to be addressed. Sort of a policy audit, so to speak.
I will speak to that, since I also worked with the policy service at KSBA, as well as special ed personnel, board meetings, board open meetings, all those things. Yes, maybe. Particularly if you had a concern about them, because here's how that works at the School Boards Association. There may be policies that you have that are not recommended versions from KSBA. And having been a school administrator, you probably know this, you and I may have had a conversation about this. If it was not the recommended version, boards would sometimes make other decisions based on politics or whatever that were not recommended by the attorneys and the policy staff at KSBA. And if they're older policies in particular, if the boards didn't decide to take the updated versions or whatever, yes, you could wind up in some sorts of legal liability situations because those policies are not the recommended versions. So that is part of what I do when I talk to people in training. Is I say, you look at those policies, you can call KSBA, they can tell us whether those are the recommended versions, and they can tell us why they recommended that you not do something, and we can go back and track back through that and find out if there is some problem with the policies. If I were going to audit, I would probably focus first on the student ones. And because the student ones, you know, I always tell the staff, the teachers I train, the principals, they have to understand and use the policies related to kids, the supervision, the child abuse reporting, the health issues. They absolutely need to use those things. The other, I guess, would be maybe your finance policies, although I think since finance officers have had to be certified, they didn't used to be when I was in Fayette County. Now that they have to have certification, they have to have special training. There has been a lot of changes made with the financial policies, but if you wanted us to do an audit, that is certainly something we're very capable of doing. That'll take a while. Of course, that will cost some money because that is picky work. We're comparing laws and statutes to every little word in the law. Every little word makes a difference. I was an English major. And I'm so cognizant in the law, if you put, if you miss one little word in the law, it's something that you write, you've got a problem, you've changed the whole meaning. So that's a possibility.
If I may interject, Board Member Jones, I do have a question mainly about scope, because we do have an in-house general counsel that would typically, when it comes to the personnel, the administrative matters, right? That's usually the wheelhouse of the general counsel. So when we're thinking kind of about the scopes, the board has its governance lane, superintendent and his team have the administrative lane. So kind of how do you envision that? Because what the RFP is looking for an attorney to liaison or to liaise with the board per se. And if there are instances where there's overlap, then you would be working with the in-house counsel. But so how do you envision kind of that scope of work and balancing that?
And I would say that I know Shelley Chatfield, have known her since she started working down there. I have a lot of respect for her. I do understand that she does work under the superintendent and that personnel is his wheelhouse. Also, having worked for KSBA, I do understand and used to train on what the obligations and duties of the board are versus superintendent and all these other folks. So I do understand that well. Would be very happy to do that. I love working with board members, interacting with board members. I think we would have a good relationship as far as my working with Shelley on those issues. We've talked about a lot of matters in the past. And as long as the board sets out that scope, that's what we're to do, that's fine. We will be talking only with board members if that's only one people you want us to talk with.
Yep, no problem with that at all.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
The only other question that I'm, go ahead.
Board
go
Member
ahead.
Morris.
You've already started. So
the only other question I would have is that I'm very interested in us having legal counsel that is free of any conflicts of interest with either people inside the district or some other conflicts that, it's hard for me to maybe imagine what they might possibly be. How would you ensure that were you to be selected for this role, that you would represent first and only the best interest of the Board of Education? We would be your chief client and your number one priority.
I would just say on behalf of all attorneys, if they're doing what they're supposed to do, if we are aware of a conflict of interest, we have to immediately get out of it and inform you if you thought there was one, or we perceive one. They can take our law license away. So I know everybody knows there are conflict of interest created with some attorneys and they don't care. And they go through life with it. That's not our firm. That's not Teresa. That's not Chris. That's not me or anybody up here. And we wouldn't accept this if we thought going in right now there were any conflicts of interest that we have. Just because we represent other educational entities or that we're in a lawsuit, if it involved Fayette County, then we'd have to get out of it. And we don't have any of that. And we've never sued the Fayette County Board. I don't think we've done anything against the Fayette County Board in the 47 years I've been here. We've been asked to, I'll be honest with you, but we haven't, and we won't, and we're not in a conflict going in.
Thank you. Board Member.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Board Member Morris.
I just wanted to I guess, reiterate the importance that we want somebody to represent, the board. But I also would like the opportunity to have you all review our contracts before we sign it, before board meetings and those types of things. So I just wanted to know if that's something that you've done in the past and that would be included in your scope of work.
We absolutely have reviewed all kinds of contracts for school boards and other entities, and absolutely would do that kind of work for you. Because you've been to your board training, that school boards are heavily regulated, and there's things that private businesses can do that you can't do. And there's things that other people will try to get you to agree to, and say, oh, that's all right. Our attorneys looked at it. Well, no, we're your attorney. We would look out for the best interest of the district and of the board. And you are our client, and we understand who our client is. We understand that if we are board counsel, that's who we answer to. And that is our first obligation always. And
if you had a real estate contract to purchase or sell something, we can do that. AIA contracts for building things, we can do that. We can do MOUs, Teresa and I and Chris have looked at all those things Teresa and I for many years. Chris, not so many, but a lot. And we can do that. I do contracts all the time. I mean, real estate contracts, 60, I know you've got bigger jobs, but millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So we're capable of doing that.
Yeah, and you also have contracts with some of these state agencies sometimes, because I know you had to stop, sometimes you'll get involved with the day treatment for juvenile justice or the Kentucky Educational Collaborative for state agency kids. You'll have those kind of contracts. And yes, we'd be very capable and very happy to look at those for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. Are there any other questions, board members?
Chair
Board
Murphy,
Member
I have one final question. First of all, everyone else, we must be a good team, because as I write my questions down, you're knocking them off. So thank you, team members. Do you guys offer opportunities for preemptive learning for us as your client, as a board? Have you done that, or would you think about doing something like that?
Yeah, if I could first just say, just because of my experience with the board, that when I was in Fayette County, we had board training sessions when new board members would come on and talk to them about responsibilities and the ins and outs of board votes. And there's even, little quirky things about board votes and, whether abstentions count with a majority and all of that kind of stuff, and what your roles and responsibilities are. We are very open to that. And Guy and I both have done a lot of training with people, and we're told we're good at it. And so, yeah, I think that that's something we would welcome the opportunity to work with you on anytime you wanted us to do so.
Thank you.
I'm here. I'm sorry. Excellent. Any last questions, board members? Okay. Is my understanding that the other firm is in the waiting room. So we do appreciate you all taking the time tonight to visit us virtually and to answer our questions and to provide the presentation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully.
Okay, Mr. Moore, if you want to let the other crew in from the waiting room. Oh, I'll say I'm coming in.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you all?
Doing well. Is it just you tonight, Mr. Salisbury?
Yes, it's just me tonight.
Okay. I didn't mean to phrase it that way. Okay, excellent. Mr. Salisbury, you may begin whenever you're ready. We'll invite you to provide a presentation, any information or overview you want to give us, and then we'll open it up to board members for some Q&A.
Sounds good. What I'd like to do, of course, is go beyond what we had in our RFP response to the board back in May, and talk tonight a little bit about me, a little bit of why I think you should choose our firm, and then close it out with sharing a little bit about my philosophy of the board attorney job, should the board choose to hire us. And so I don't take it for granted that you all have had plenty to read already about your candidates, myself included. So I don't want to rehash that, but I thought we'd cover those three areas here. A little bit about myself. My parents, my mom and my dad. My mom's a teacher, and my dad is a hospice chaplain. And so the idea of having a lawyer in the family is still, even 20 years on, a novelty to them. My dad found out that I was looking at law school. He literally gave me no response. My father-in-law, on the other hand, started sending me every lawyer joke he could find. He thought they were funny, still thinks they're funny, still doesn't hesitate to supply them to me. His favorite happens to be, well, what is the difference between a lawyer and a catfish? And he doesn't waste time to tell me that one is a, as he says, scum-sucking bottom feeder, and the other one is a fish. Now, I don't take that too offensively, given that it's my father-in-law, but I am the first in my family, and I do love what I do. Didn't start out looking at law school. In college, I actually was studying to go into elementary education, but then turned my attention to law school. But I knew I still wanted to do something that helped kids. So we came down to Kentucky. We were in Michigan at the time, Kentucky for law school, and 23 years later, we're still here and still very much loving what we do in our time here. I have two boys, one at Jesse Clark and one at Lafayette, and so we know and we love the Fayette County School District and have been very, very pleased with the education our boys have gotten in Fayette County and with the administration and the teachers that have served them. It's been a very good experience. I enjoy traveling quite a bit. I've been to places like India and Peru and Israel and Jordan and Mexico. And I like to get to new places like that. And I enjoy getting out to my boys' ball games. I can't think of a better way to spend an evening than to really be at one of the games with my boys and watching their ball games there. So that's a little bit about me and my life. Of course, I've been married for 23 years as well, and it won't surprise anyone to know that my wife is by far the brains of the operation in our house, and we wouldn't get far without her. So she's amazing as well. She is a bookkeeper and finance person and does a fantastic job. A little bit about why I think the board should choose our firm and why we think our firm would be very good for Fayette County Public Schools. Myself, I have 20 years of experience working for education clients. 5 of those years, I was board attorney for Madison County Schools. I've been going on now over 5 years as board attorney for Scott County Schools. And of course, worked with other private schools, public school districts, colleges and universities, defending lawsuits, investigating misconduct, consulting on special issues throughout this time. And that includes Fayette County Schools, as the board knows. Just in the last few years, we've helped the district with special ed hearings, expulsion hearings, defending lawsuits, and of course, as you're aware, helping even with superintendent search issues. And every one of those times has been our pleasure to serve the district. We have colleagues at our firm that have years upon years of experience defending and advising schools and other public agencies and across an array of issues. And those colleagues are invaluable to providing good service to the district. I think what's really important and what really makes us a good choice is that we love what we do. I love what I do. You don't practice with the same firm and in the same area of law for as long as I have if you don't really enjoy your colleagues and your clients and helping solve the legal challenges they face. And I think that makes us better at our jobs and makes us provide better service for our clients because we enjoy what we do so much. We enjoy serving education clients, and there's no two ways about it. And I don't think can't imagine doing anything else. Lastly, on why I think our firm is a good choice, I firmly believe that we're a mid-sized firm, and that's the perfect size. And let me explain. Sometimes a large firm can be expensive and impersonal. Sometimes a small firm can have too limited of resources. At a mid-sized firm like our own, we're just a little over 24 attorneys. We have the resources and the skill sets across a variety of fields, while still having the benefit of being able to have a direct relationship between you and the attorneys who would help you. And that size is as well, both in the array of services we can provide, but also the quality and collaboration that we can provide with the school district. Last, I want to touch a little bit on my philosophy of the job as a board attorney, if the board should choose to hire us. First and foremost, I think there has to be a team approach. The board attorney works for and it reports to the board, really just like your superintendent does. And like your superintendent, my goal is to work together with the board to help make sure students have a solid, safe, productive learning environment. This is not just another job, just another project, if you will. I really feel like this is part of a team relationship and approach to help serve the students and families in our community. Second, I really believe in responsiveness. Always trying to make sure that I know not just what you need, but when you need it, and that the board can have the advantage of myself and my colleagues and our resources to help make sure it gets done. And we all know that there are times when something maybe can't be addressed right then in that very moment. And even then, we'll still work to make sure we can do it in a timely fashion and keep you informed of how things are and when things will be squared away. And I will take your call. I really believe that's important. I don't believe in ignoring or delaying a call. And if for some reason I can't, I can assure you I will promptly respond. I think that communication line is crucial and that responsiveness is very important. Lastly, I think there are some misconceptions oftentimes about what the board attorney is supposed to do. Are you supposed to be a rubber stamp? Are you supposed to be the legal police? Which is it? And the answer, in my opinion, is neither. There's going to be times as a board attorney when I'll have to say, no, I don't think we can do that. But if I'm doing my job well, many times instead of saying no, what I'll tell you, what I'll be able to say, what I'll work to be able to let you know is that we can accomplish your goal. We just might have to be creative or willing to take some extra steps to get there. It's about thinking outside the box. It's about trying to get the board where it wants to go. The goal is not to kill ideas or make things harder. We want to get things done in a way that's impactful and sustainable. So it would be our pleasure to work for the board. We've enjoyed the work we've already done, and we would not take it lightly. We would consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to continue to work for the board in a more sustained capacity. So that's our presentation, and I'm certainly glad to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Salisbury. Board members, any questions for Mr. Salisbury?
I will start.
Board member Green.
Thank you, Mr. Salisbury, for joining us this evening.
Sure.
So I will ask a question. Have you in the past, or would it be something that you would think about with offering trainings or education meetings for the board to kind of keep us up to date with what's going on?
Certainly. One of the things we've done for board clients in the past, very recently even, and one of the things I actually enjoy doing is providing trainings, what sometimes we'll call them lunch and learns, where we get together. Yes, it's a meeting, but in a little less formal capacity. And the purpose of those, and those are frequently done as a courtesy, not on billable time, but as a courtesy to bring the board up to speed on maybe there's a hot issue that we think you should know about. Sometimes there'll be enough questions from enough board members that it's we can say, okay, maybe we need to have another lunch and learn because this is clearly something everyone's thinking about. And so we'll do that. And there have been times even in recent years where we worked with the KSBA and the KDE to get our board members continuing ed credit for the time we've spent with them doing those lunch and learn topics there. Things like open meetings, open records, sure, but other topics as well. So yes, we would be willing to do it. Frequently, we don't charge to do it. That's just kind of part of having that relationship. And quite honestly, I enjoy that teaching aspect. I told you at the beginning that I started out wanting to teach. That desire to teach hasn't gone away. It just happens in a different capacity now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chair, or thank you, Vice Chair Green. Mr. Salisbury, or any other questions for Mr. Salisbury?
Yeah,
Board Member Jones?
I would have a couple of questions. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Salisbury, were your firm to be selected, how would you begin? What would you envision taking place as we would get started? How would you get started in this role?
Or maybe to rephrase to make sure I'm understanding you, how would we kick off the relationship?
Well, we can say how would we kick off of the relationship, but how would we get organized
Sure.
to transition to you and your firm as legal counsel?
Well, there's a couple of things I think have to be done, and things that I've used to work through that kind of transition period in the past with other relationships. I think one is, first and foremost, I think I have to sit down with your board chair, maybe also your vice chair, to get an idea of, and the superintendent, honestly, get an idea of, okay, what is big and at the forefront for you all right now? I mean, I can read the news, but the news only tells you so much. From your all's perspective, what are the big issues you're facing right now? And what are the immediate legal needs you have? Because you got to take care of first things first. What is super time sensitive, but also get a projection of things heading out. The second thing, I think it's important, and I've never had a problem with doing this, is to connect with the prior board attorney and also your in-house counsel, just to get a feel specifically for the legal issues then that are pending and facing, and how things have been handled so far, so that we are not reinventing things from scratch. And lastly, obviously, at some point, there needs to be, I think, a sit down with the board as a whole, perhaps maybe even what we might say is an inaugural lunch and learn, to get a feel for what kinds of things are on the board's mind. Bottom line, the short answer is there's communication, communication, communication. And it starts with finding out what's important to the client, what do they see as their immediate needs, and what are some of their mid and long-term goals. Once we know that, I think it kind of helps us cue in on what the board's philosophies and concerns are, and that helps shape the kind of legal advice and that we provide going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Salisbury. Thank you, Board Member Jones. Any other questions, board members?
I don't have any questions for Mr. Salisbury, but I do have some questions for all of us here in a moment.
Well, then I would have one more question for Mr. Salisbury, and that has
Sure.
to do with conflict of interest. You mentioned in your presentation that you have represented Fayette County. Did you represent the district or the board?
You know, that's a good question, and it goes to a bigger question of who is the client, right? In a school district, like Fayette County or any other of the Kentucky school districts, the client for the board attorney is the board. But that comes with the recognition of a few things. Number one, the board has other folks that the board attorney needs to be able to work with and collaborate with, like its executive agent, the superintendent. The board, while it doesn't handle personnel matters, is still the employer of teachers and staff, and they will need assistance from time to time in their professional issues. It's not uncommon in the work I've done as board attorney, for example, to get called to the superintendent's office or to say, hey, we have this administrator or this guidance counselor who's been subpoenaed. testify here or appear here. Can you please help them get ready, accompany them, etc.? But first and foremost, the voice, the decision maker, the contact point, the client, if you will, is the board. The remaining folks are members of the team that we would help serve in the board's interests there. But the board is the one that we answer to, in my opinion.
So if I could just make sure I'm understanding you, you are assuring us that the Board of Education would be your first and only client in any matters coming before the school district or the school board, that there are no conflicts of interest that you currently have or that you would envision having or that you've had in the past, either with district employees or as an attorney representing the district or as an attorney representing a plaintiff.
Sure. No, absolutely. I don't have, nor am I aware of, nor do I plan on allowing myself to get into a conflict of interest between another party and the board. That is, as you might imagine, is an essential hallmark to any good lawyer-client relationship. As I mentioned, obviously we are going to work with folks on your behalf, but that is very different than working for folks who would be opposed or adverse to the board. And I would not put myself in that situation, and I am not in that situation. There are no ties I'm going to have to sever in order to do work for the board. Let me put it that way.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Murphy, I don't have any more questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. Thank you, Mr. Salisbury. Any other questions? Board members for Mr. Salisbury. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
You do the same. Okay, Board Member Spires.
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in here for a moment. I have some concerns, if I'm going to be honest, that we are setting either of these firms up for failure slightly. And based on the questions that have just been asked and some of the discussion in the past few minutes, both firms are excellent firms. I have worked with both firms in the past and other board positions and think they're both capable. I also recognize that I am the only person up here who has worked with the board attorney in the past. So I want to clarify, we definitely need a board attorney. And, the board attorney typically works with the chair and with the superintendent and aligns in that way. A lot of the questions tonight seem to be, and I raised this question to you all a few months ago, seem to be responsibilities of our in-house counsel. And my concern is that we've stepped out of our lane slightly. And my concern is too, that it will cost us more to outsource these jobs and responsibilities than to give them to our in-house counsel. Now, what I had asked of you all back in the day, about 6 months ago, was if we feel like in-house counsel has too much going on, then we can direct the superintendent to evaluate that office. And as we're getting ready to produce the next budget, look at whether we need another person in-house. But typically the board attorney represents just us, the board. They help us with the superintendent's contract and with issues that may arise with the superintendent. I'll be honest, our current board attorney, who we do currently have an attorney through who's contracted through the rest of this year, was very helpful during Superintendent Cox's illness and passing, and in those periods, and was in daily contact with us. The board counsel typically helps us with expulsion hearings, and typically helps us even amongst ourselves. If one of us thought we had a conflict of interest or one of us had a concern, we would take it to the board attorney. And then they work alongside our in-house counsel when needed, for litigation matters or other matters as well. And typically it has not been a position that really has a lot of to it, which I think is why there was some thought we didn't get necessarily as many RFPs as possible, because the reality is a lot of firms, we really divvy up work to a lot of firms in our community through litigation and other matters. And so this is kind of a smaller piece. We do contract with KSBA to review our policies. And we already kind of have a policy procedure going. Can it be approved upon? Yes. How would we get started with a new board attorney? I mean, that would really be for Tyler to engage with them and tell them what work we have coming on and what needs to be done going forward. But I guess my concern tonight is that I'm not sure we as a board know what a board attorney does. And I would be hesitant to go forward with either of these until we have that discussion a little further amongst ourselves. So that is kind of my thoughts and my observations. I think it's well-intentioned. I think I just think we're a young board. And so we just maybe are not aware of who does what yet and are trying to learn that. And so I want us to just be very cautious as we move forward.
Chair Murphy, may I?
Mm-hmm.
Board member Spires, I appreciate your comments. I do want to just speak because I only know myself. I am very clear on the knowledge of the lanes of the board attorney and the in-house counsel. And I think it's important that we have, I know we currently do, and we continue to make sure that we continue to have that representation just for the lane as a board attorney. So I do want to clarify that while I've been on the board since January, I am very well aware of the exact role of the board attorney because that was our due diligence to know what we were looking at coming into this RFP process and requesting this. So I personally am very well aware of the role of what a board attorney would do. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Green. Any other comments, board members, or questions? And what we can do to, my understanding would be, if we opt for either firm, and staff can chime in here to clarify, the firm would draft a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement or a contract with the board that would define those particular terms, and such an agreement or such an arrangement, I hope would address any concerns that board member Spires brought up to ensure that that attorney would be an attorney for the board and doesn't venture into any of those lanes. Because I do agree that that's an important concern, and that I was attempting to tailor my questioning earlier in that direction, that there are two specific lanes, and that we all need to be aware of that, including whoever would serve as the board attorney. So my hope would be that could be clarified and ironed out in whatever is drafted, because there's no vote or there's no contract that's entered into until it's been presented to us as a board. We've had an opportunity to review it, and then we vote upon it and take action. So that's my understanding of the process. And if we have any staff members who can clarify, or Dr. Liggins, if you're aware of kind of the next steps.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The next steps would be that the board would come to a consensus of what direction they would like to take. You obviously, being board chair, would reach out to that firm and probably begin the process of creating a memorandum of understanding. I would recommend that once a first draft is created, that you would share that with both in-house counsel and myself, and possibly have the four of us all sit down to make sure that the roles are very clear and understood. And then ultimately, once you were satisfied with what the roles were and the memorandum of understanding overall, it would come back to the board for final approval.
What are our thoughts then on that, board members?
I have a question for the staff. Do we have a time period that we ensure our students receive an expulsion hearing? Is there like a max on how long we have students waiting for those hearings?
Ms. Morris, that's a great question and something I've wrestled with since I got here, to be honest. No, there is not. And it's something we struggled with when I first got here. We were so far behind that I actually started setting them up every couple of weeks to get caught up because I thought this, we just needed to do that. Right now, we are not so far behind. We do have some that we are trying to schedule right now. We are working on doing that. But no, there is not a time frame in law or in policy. A lot of times it is dependent on the availability of the board attorney and the board members and trying to coordinate those schedules. Sometimes that can be quite complicated, to be honest.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Morris. So the question then essentially is, do we want to achieve consensus tonight based upon what we've heard and move in a direction of drafting a memorandum of understanding with one of these firms, or do we want to hold off?
I'd like to move forward.
Yeah, I would like to move forward. I asked the question about how we would get started because I'm not sure in my own mind how we can organize this so that we are utilizing our in-house counsel to the fullest extent possible with economy in mind. But I also am not sure how we're going to I'm not sure how we're going to ensure that the council that we have, the board council that we have, is advising us on the things that they need to be advising us on. So all that needs to be worked out. I don't know why it can't be worked out in the process that Dr. Liggins has outlined. I think there's probably some a reasonable path forward that we can take. I know that there's some litigation that we're looking at right now. It's, I think, very current, and I think it's important that we have our own legal counsel as soon as we can have them in place. So I'd like to urge that we move ahead with this tonight.
I agree. I would like to move ahead, and I appreciate Dr. Liggins and Chair Murphy kind of explaining the process of which those relationships and exact job, will be outlined as Board Member Spires brought up. So I think that would bring a lot of clarity, but I am comfortable moving ahead.
And again, all of these concerns that were raised, they can be addressed in whatever the next steps are. So, because there's no final action or anything that's happening tonight. So if the consensus is moving forward, what is the, do we have a preference? Then let's discuss what we just heard from.
Well, I don't want to start, but I will unless there's someone else that wants to jump in. Ms. Spires, do you want to get started?
Like I said before, I think they're both remarkable firms. In my mind, Fowler edges slightly based on some experience and a variety of depth and experience, the litigation. I mean, they have a bigger department, and again, as we've just discussed, there are several different layers of issues that the board needs assistance with. And so for me, it's just a very slight, we've worked with Mr. Salisbury before, and he's great too. So I would be happy with either firm, but for me, experience leans just slightly more towards Fowler.
And I would agree with Ms. Spires on this. I think they're both terrific firms. The responses to the questions that I asked in their presentation tonight, I felt like hit some really important points, including the idea that we have a huge mission in this community, and we do not have an unlimited budget to spend on litigation and legal matters. And I sensed that Fowler was very sensitive to that and wanted to make sure that we had as many dollars as we possibly could have to spend on educating the children in Fayette County. I also very much appreciate the depth of experience that Teresa Combs would bring to this work. It's remarkable that we would have an opportunity to have access to someone with Ms. Combs's background and reputation. The experience that she had is just kind of extraordinary. I don't know that there's anyone in Kentucky other than our help me out here, Ms. Spires, the previous legal counsel.
The senior Chenoweth.
Right, Chenoweth. I don't think there's anybody in Kentucky that would come close to Chenoweth except Teresa Combs. And so it seems to me that is certainly a strong, speaks very strongly of them. And then their response to conflict of interest, I felt like was also very strong. It meant a lot to me. It was the response I was expecting from any attorney, a very strong response about the importance of avoiding and safeguarding conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. Board Member Green or Board Member Morris?
Well, I have to say that I really appreciated Mr. Salisbury's help with the superintendent contract. So it's a really tough decision. I really I don't know at this time that I have my mind made up. I think I really appreciated the experience of Ms. Combs and what she brought to the table. But we have had recent experience. So I'm just going to put it out there that I guess gosh, they're both just so good. And I'm not sure that I have my mind made up. Sorry, that's probably not what you wanted to hear.
No, you don't need to apologize.
I will share that they are both phenomenal. I feel lucky that they took the time out to meet with us this evening. I'm sorry, I just have a dog barking. And really take the time to think about letting us, having us as a client. I am leaning the other way compared to some of the board members. I feel like Josh Salisbury and the firm of Sturgill, Turner, Barker, and Maloney just lead a tad. And I really respect and appreciate Ms. Combs' experience, and I value that. I really do. I have called all of the references, and she was very highly spoken about. On Josh Salisbury's firm, one, I really appreciate his very intentionality, the work that he did recently with the superintendent search. He sought out minor issues to really be preventative with us and really put our best interests at the very forefront. Today, he really was forward thinking about being preventative and also being impactful and sustainable as a board. And I think it's important because our lane is very defined and what can we do, and then making sure that what we can do has a direct impact for the best outcome for the students and then thus the families and the staff. I also like the focus on communication. I think in today's world, that's how things get done. You have to have open lines of communication and bringing that forward. And actually, when talked about the conflict of interest, I think he really was focused on talking about the importance of answering to the client. I think he read the question a little bit differently. So at first he really focused on the client is the school board, the Board of Education. And then I think once he understood your question meant something different, he reacted exactly as expected of all lawyers. So that is how I'm leaning at this moment.
Thank you, Board Member Green. And I will say that, I was also impressed with both firms, and I like Ms. Morris, I'm I see the pros and the cons. I appreciate the experience that Fowler Bell brought to the table. I also appreciated Mr. Salisbury's kind of recognition of the client to board member Green's point that recognizing this was the board attorney versus, we heard a lot about some of the other areas of coverage from Fowler Bell. So we just want to make sure that there's a precise understanding of those roles and those lanes. If we have board members on the fence and I don't want to be the one that pushes this one way or the other. I'm fine if we need to take some time and return to this discussion. If you all need to go back and particularly, I know Board Member Morris says she was torn. If you want to go back and look at the RFPs and then we can move forward. Because right now there's not really consensus on the exact firm right now. So I want to make sure every board member is comfortable before we move forward. So Dr. Liggins, what are your thoughts? I mean, we could look at getting an MOU drafted from both firms and comparing that way, or just giving board members a little bit more time.
I think time is probably, in my opinion, the best option.
Yeah, so we can do that. Because like I said, I want every board member to be comfortable before we proceed. And it's actually a good position to be in that we have two strong options. So we will allow you the space and the opportunity to look back over the information we have, reflect upon what we've heard tonight. If questions crop up, we can send those to the firms as well and share the responses with board members too. So, and then we can return to this.
Well, so can we put this on the agenda for Monday night, the 23rd?
We can. Yeah, if Board Member Morris, would you be comfortable with that?
I would, and I was going to make the same suggestion, just to give me a little bit more time to look back over everything. I was not expecting to have such, they were both just great. So it's going to be a difficult decision. I think it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, because I had a clear favorite when I sat down here today. So a little bit more time, and on Monday I'll be prepared to make that call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's do that. We'll put it on the agenda for Monday, and then if we have consensus Monday, then that we can proceed with the next steps that we discussed earlier. Okay. Excellent. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, staff, for your time. Thank you to our firms for presenting and coming and sharing with us and responding to our questions as well. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion by Board Member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all.